At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. I mean, in the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name is the Voice Ogre, and let's begin. To stop the systematic eradication of the galaxy's most tranquil species, the Terran Mandate dispatched one ship. Commander August Cole, aboard that one ship, had a few choice words the Admiralty who hadn't sent two. The main view screen was a mural of planetary abuse. The Lassa, the system's third world, had been a jewel of cerulean oceans and jade archipelagos. Now, greasy columns of smoke clawed at the sky, memorials for cities woven from river reeds. Cutters, the color of dried blood, swarmed through the atmosphere like metal insects, herding the Luminese elegant skiffs into crude containment pens. Above them, colossal brutalist barges, the architects of this horror, hung in low orbit. The gravity beams stabbed down, impartial and absolute, plucking figures away from their homes. The Lumini, true to their nature, met violence with stillness. They just held one another as the beams reeled them in. Cole watched a family, 2 adults, 1 child, get hoisted apart by the beam's unseen grip, their silent screams lost to the vacuum. A cold knot tightened in Cole's stomach. The view screen blurred, the image dissolving into a memory that left the taste of superheated metal on his tongue. A child's face, small and terrified. Pressed against the reinforced viewport of the transport Stargazer. Behind her, the Cinderfall colony was a bonfire. Cole's convoy had been too late. He'd chosen the wrong evacuation route, gambling on a nebula thick with pirate sensor ghosts. It was a rookie's mistake, paid for with lives. The memory always ended the same way, with a silent, overwhelming gloom of light from the transport reactor failing. He blinked. The fire on Cinderfall receded, replaced by the slow-motion horror on Lassa. The memory didn't fade. It settled in his bones and hardened his face into something impassive and absolute. "Status," he said, his voice a low gravel. Lieutenant Zabi Vallis, his XO, stood with her shoulders squared and spine locked at the tactical console. Her reflection was a pale ghost on the polished surface, her eyes fixed on data streams.
Axiom Raider Fleet, 12 vessels, Commander. 1 modified heavy cruiser is their flagship, the Collector. 3 frigate-class cutters are enforcing atmospheric denial. 8 processing barges are holding low orbit. Our scans confirm that they're packaging the Lumini for transport. Life signs count. They're still dropping.
Cole's jaw tightened. 12 ships against his 1. On paper, the Vagrant was a battered SC-4 class merchant freighter with a temperamental plasma conduit and a hold full of bulk grain. It looked less like a warship and more like it was on its final run to the scrapyard. That was the point. "1 ship," Cole muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "We're gonna have to make it count." "Open a channel, wide beam," Cole ordered. "Set the modulator to captain whose bonus depends on this single delivery. And Bell, I want to hear the sound of your kid's college fund evaporating in your voice."
The comms officer, a young ensign named Bell, gave a sharp nod. "Engaging vocal despair. Aye, Commander." A frantic voice soon filled the bridge.
"Mayday! Mayday! This is Merchant Freighter Vagrant. Registry Sierra Charlie 49er. We have a critical containment failure in our slipspace drive. I repeat, total failure. We're venting plasma and we've triggered an emergency system purge. We're dead in the water and we require immediate assistance from any vessel in the Thalassa system."
Cole listened with a critical ear. Bell had spent 3 years in deep cover before his file was compromised. Faking a breakdown over the comms was one of his more pedestrian talents. The performance was a perfect cocktail of panic and weary desperation. Now the bait. Cole prompted quietly. Bell's voice cracked with sublime theatricality.
We're hauling 8,000 metric tons of premium Ceres grain. The contract is void due to the drive failure. We'll send a whole manifest at 60% discount to any ship that can render repair assistance. Please! We're losing atmosphere in Section Gamma. My crew...
He let the sound of ragged, static-laced breathing complete the sentence. Leak the secondary manifest fragment, Cole said. Make it look like a data bleed from the system purge. Vallis's hands moved over her console, her right hand keying in a command sequence while her left isolated the data packet for transmission.
Fragment is away, sir. Just a little taste.
The fragment was a sublime piece of digital bait. It was a corrupted manifest that, with some careful decryption, hinted at a single, heavily shielded crate in the main cargo hold. The manifest listed no contents, only the crate's military-grade gravimetric shielding and its significant power consumption. Those specifications pointed to only one piece of contraband in the galaxy: synaptic looms. They were absurdly illegal, nearly unobtainable, and worth more than the ship, its crew, and the 8,000 tons of grain. Miles away, aboard the collector, Administrator Gallo leaned back in his oversized command chair, a thin smirk playing on his lips. His ship's bridge was a testament to his personality, all intersecting planes of black metal and aggressive crimson lighting. He projected an image of a ruthless corporate enforcer, but beneath that veneer was a simple, bottomless greed.
A damsel in distress,
Gallo said to his first mate, a block of muscle named Boar.
How charming.
A trick, Administrator.
Boar rumbled, his voice a low rasp like stone scraping stone.
Has to be.
Of course it's a trick,
Gallo said with a dismissive wave.
The question is, who is the architect and who is the mark? The grain's a nice bonus, something to pad the quarterly report for the syndicates.
He tapped a manicured finger on his console, where his tech specialist had just finished decoding the leaked specifications.
But this is a private pension plan.
Boar squinted at the data.
Synaptic looms on a grain hauler.
Precisely.
Gallo purred.
An absurdity so profound, it circles back to being credible. Some corporate effective skimming off the top, using a deniable transport, and the whole thing goes sour.
It's perfect. His eyes shone with avarice. The prize like this required his personal touch. His crew was loyal enough when it came to abdicating pacifists, but a fortune in looms would test the integrity of a saint, and Gallo didn't employ saints.
Open a channel to the freighter,
Gallo commanded, his tone shifting to a magnanimous concern.
Inform the poor captain that we are on our way. Grant him permission to land on the planet to await our repair skiff. The atmospheric interference will make the detailed cargo scan problematic.
He smiled, already mentally spending the money. The fool on that freighter had blundered into the wrong system on the wrong day. This entire operation was just another line item on his ledger. But this one would have a very profitable footnote. The Vagrant shuttle, a boxy, unthreatening craft designated the Pony, touched down a full kilometer from the nearest ravaged Lumini settlement. Its landing thrusters breathed out, raising a gentle cloud of ochre dust, instead of carving a crater in the delta soil. Cole and a small team, Valis and 2 security officers, disembarked. They were dressed in simple ship suits, without armor or visible weapons. The rifles stayed locked in a case aboard the shuttle. They walked toward the settlement. The air was thick with the smell of salt, wet reeds, and the sharp chemical scent of scorched structures. They saw the Lumini gathered near the largest of their woven longhouses, structures whose sweeping, curved lines echoed the landscape around them. They were tall, slender beings with the skin the color of polished mahogany and large, dark, expressive eyes. A profound sadness was etched into their faces, but there was no fear. An ancient Lumini, his skin intricately lined like a dried riverbed, stepped forward. His movements were slow but deliberate, imbued with an unshakable dignity. This was Elder Kadarius. His gaze met the humans, and his brow furrowed slightly. He had expected soldiers armed for war. He saw only 4 people in work jumpsuits. Still, his expression remained guarded. Cole stopped his team 10 meters away. He raised a single open palm, a universal gesture of peace.
My name is August Cole. My ship is the Vagrant. We're from the Terran Mandate. You carry no weapons,
Kadarius stated. His voice was soft, yet it carried across the distance with perfect clarity, like a single, pure musical note. It was both a question and a judgment.
They're on our ship,
Cole replied.
My people have a history of violence, Elder Kadarius, but we did not bring our weapons here to your home to meet you. And why are you here?
Kadarius' dark eyes searched Cole's face, looking for the deception, the price tag attached to the visit.
To offer help.
Kadarius' expression saddened.
The Axiom Raiders offered to help manage our resources. Their help is a cage. We have learned to fear help that arrives from the stars.
We're not asking you to fight, Cole said. He took a step forward, his boots sinking into the soft earth.
We're not asking you to kill. We won't ask you to become us. Then what do you ask?
Cole met his gaze without flinching.
I'm asking you to live. We will deal with the Axiom fleet, but they have ground teams, patrols. You need to disappear. We'll give you the means to hide, to evade, to survive this. We won't ask you to raise a hand against them.
He paused, letting the words settle.
All you gotta do is survive. Leave the rest to me.
Behind Kadarius, a younger Lumine woman with eyes that held a fierce, desperate intelligence watched Cole with an unnerving intensity. This was Nyala, Kadarius' granddaughter. She heard the hard logic behind the human's words and recognized a lifeline. Her grandfather feared the corruption of their people's spirit. She saw a chance to have a spirit left to be corrupted. While Cole debated philosophy with the Elder, Zabi Valis and Chief Engineer Reggie were engaged in a more practical form of diplomacy. They oversaw the unloading of several large, heavy-duty crates from the pony's cargo bay. Each was stenciled with the words, Geological Survey Equipment, Geocore Surveillance.
Geological survey equipment?
Reggie grumbled, running a hand through his grizzled gray hair. He was a man in his late 50s who looked like he'd been born in an engine room and pickled in hydraulic fluid.
That's an insult to the trade. It's a perfectly good CS9 sonic resonator. Its purpose is mapping subterranean strata. A noble, dignified calling. And what do we do? We recalibrate its pulse frequency to scramble the inner ear of anyone within 10 meters. It's like asking a concert violin to be a cudgel.
Just make sure it's a well-tuned cudgel, Reggie, Valis said.
She looked at her datapad, directing a group of young Lumini volunteers, Nyala among them. They worked with a quiet, heartbreaking purpose, their graceful movements a stark contrast to the brutal utility of the technology they handled. Nyala approached Valis, her gaze fixed on one of the crates.
My grandfather. He is wise, but wisdom does not stop a plasma bolt.
Valis looked at the young Lumini. She saw the war within her, a deep reverence for her culture warring with the stark reality of its potential extinction. Valis led her away from the others, toward a secluded sea cave that glowed with the cool, blue-green light of phosphorescent moss. Inside, Reggie had already opened one of the crates. It held no drills or sample bags. Thick gray foam cradled compact field emitters, deployable sonic stunners that looked like flat metallic discs, and a delicate web of passive sensor nodes. Valis picked up one of the emitters. It was a heavy, metallic cylinder. She placed it on the cave floor and activated it with a tap on her datapad. A low hum filled the space, a translucent wall of force. Its surface a flowing lattice of interlocking triangles, sprang into existence between them and the cave entrance.
They can't kill,
Valis explained, her voice low and serious. She picked up a small rock and tossed it at the barrier. It hit the glowing wall with a dull thud and dropped to the ground.
They can't harm, but they can keep you from being killed. It's a wall, a door, a place to hide.
Nyala reached out a slender, hesitant hand and touched the glowing field. It felt like a cool, unyielding, still water-like presence. For the first time in days, a weight seemed to lift from her shoulders. This was a third path. Not violence, not martyrdom. It was survival. A gift her people could accept. A new message, laced with carefully dosed panic, shot from the Vagrant. It was Cole's voice this time, strained and breathless.
Gallo! Administrator Gallo, do you read me? This is Cole of the Vagrant. We have a full drive core containment failure. The safeties are offline. We're venting raw plasma directly into the engine room. The ship is dead. I repeat, completely dead. I can't guarantee the integrity of the magnetic containment on the cargo. I formally request that you take control of my vessel to ensure the safety of my crew and the cargo manifest.
On the bridge of the collector, Gallo laughed out loud. It was a rich, full-throated sound of pure triumph. It was too perfect. The bumbling merchant captain not only delivered a treasure, but now practically begged him to take it. The containment failure was a wonderful excuse to get his men on board without pretense.
It all falls into place,
He crowed, spreading his hands wide.
Fortune doesn't just favor the bold, or it positively throws itself at them.
He assembled his elite team, the Breachers, 24 of his best soldiers, clad in black hard suits with the Axiom conglomerate's stylized logo stenciled on their helmets. They were killers and thugs, but they were his killers and thugs. He would lead them personally. The synaptic looms were too valuable for chance. Minutes later, Gallo's boarding shuttle docked with the Vagrant with a heavy metallic clang. He strode onto the ship's bridge, a dozen breachers fanning out behind him, their heavy mag rifles at a low ready. The Vagrant bridge was cramped, a little grimy, and smelled faintly of processed air and old coffee. It looked like what they pretended to be, terrified civilians. Cole stood by the captain's chair, his face pale.
His uniform rumpled. Gallo's smirk was a gash of condescending pity.
Engine trouble, Captain Cole. A terrible thing when your equipment fails you.
He ran a gloved hand over a console.
Worry about nothing. I will take this heap off your hands. It's no trouble. None at all, really.
Just nodded, looking utterly defeated. The high-value crate is in the main cargo bay. Aft, deck 3.
Of course it is,
Gallo said smoothly. He gestured to his men.
Secure the cargo. The rest of you with me.
He moved toward the cargo bay, his mind already calculating the millions of credits the looms would bring him. He was a fish that had just leaped eagerly into the net. 24 breachers filed into the main cargo bay of the Vagrant. The space was cavernous, big enough for a mountain of grain, and currently empty save for a single, large, heavily shielded crate that sat in the center. The raiders spread out, their mag boots clanking on the grated deck plating, securing the perimeter out of habit. It felt like overkill. This place was a tomb. On the bridge, Cole watched a schematic of the bay on a small secondary monitor. 24 green life signs moved into position. He leaned toward his comms panel, his voice a quiet murmur for his crew alone. Ready. Commence inventory audit. In the cramped, humming chaos of engineering, Reggie sipped from a nutrient gel pouch that smelled vaguely of chicken soup. He heard Cole's command in his earpiece and allowed himself a grim smile. Inventory audit commenced, kid. He muttered to the bulkhead. He tapped a single, oversized red icon on the primary console. It was labeled Grain Agitator Cycle. The main lights in the cargo bay cut out, plunging the space into a thick, disorienting blackness. Before the raiders' helmet-mounted lights could fully adjust, strobing crimson emergency beacons kicked in, bathing the bay in frantic pulses of red light in deep shadow. Deafening series of clangs echoed like a titan's hammer. Heavy-duty electromagnetic cargo clamps in the walls, the deck, and ceiling activated simultaneously. Designed to hold thousands of tons of shifting grain, they were irresistible to the raiders' magnetically charged rifles. Weapons ripped from hands and tore from slings, slamming against the nearest surface to become pinned and useless. Concealed hatches in the ceiling snapped open. Thick industrial cargo nets, weighted with humming stun emitters, dropped from above. Half the breachers were instantly cocooned, their struggles only tightening the nets as a crackling web of non-lethal blue energy enveloped them, causing them to spasm and collapse. Finally, repurposed acoustic panels on the walls emitted a disorienting high-frequency sonic blast. Tuned to bypass their helmets' audio dampeners, it felt like a spike directly driven into their brains. The remaining raiders, unarmed and reeling, staggered and fell to their knees, clutching their heads. The entire ambush consumed less than 5 seconds. The inventory audit was a success. The surviving breachers were veterans, disoriented, unarmed, and in pain, but unbroken. They drew combat knives and heavy-bore sidearms. They fought back with the brutal desperation of cornered animals. The corridors of the Vagrant, designed for cargo, became a series of lethal choke points. But Cole's crew were not merchants. They were convoy marines, intelligence techs, and special operators disguised as freight haulers. And they'd drilled for this exact scenario on this exact ship for months. They bled the raiders into the ship's arteries and dismantled them. A fire team of 2 breachers rounded a corner and met a thick wall of white fire suppression foam. Blinding and choking, they were taken down by 2 crew members wielding shock batons, their takedowns silent and swift. Another raider, moving down a service corridor, heard a noise from a maintenance shaft above him, He looked up just as a crewman dropped behind him. A garrote wire flashing. A choked gasp, and another life sign winked out on Cole's monitor. The sharp, crack hiss of a plasma pistol shot ricocheted near the bridge. The sound sent a jolt through Cole. The same sound from Cinder Falls spaceport. This time, the memory sharpened his focus. No one else dies on my watch. Valis, they're trying to flank through the portside mess hall, he said into his comms, tracing the raiders' movements on his screen. Reggie, vent the coolant system in Sector C7. Vent coolant in the mess hall. Reggie's voice crackled back. But that's where I keep my good coffee maker, kid. I will buy you a new one. Cole replied. Well, it better be a damn good one. A moment later, the display showed the temperature in the mess hall plummeting as a blast of freezing vapor flooded the area. The raiders' heat signatures flared as they recoiled. Their advance stalled. Cole directed another crew team to their position, using his knowledge of the ship as a weapon. Zabi Valis led the final push. Her team, moving with the lethal fluidity of seasoned Marines, cornered the last three conscious boarders in a maintenance junction. The raiders formed a defensive triangle, their backs to a power conduit. Standard breach, Valis said into her helmet comm. On my mark. One of her Marines slid a repurposed sonic stunner across the deck. It spun to a stop and emitted a single, piercing pulse of sound. The raiders flinched, their aim wavering for half a second. That was all Valis's team needed. They moved in a blur. One Marine went low, sweeping the raider's legs. Another went high, disabling his opponent with a baton strike to the neck. Valis herself disarmed the third, her movements a brutal ballet. The fight was over before the echo faded. They bound the last of the mortars. Back on the bridge, Gallo watched in stunned disbelief as the life sign indicators for his breachers winked out one by one until the tactical display was a sea of red crosses. His entire boarding party neutralized in under 10 minutes. His swagger evaporated, replaced by a cold, seething fury. This was no bumbling merchant. This was a trap. Before he could react, the trap snapped shut on him. Cole's bridge crew, the terrified civilians, rose as one. Bell, the meek comms officer, produced a shock baton from under his chair. The navigator did the same. Gallo's 2 personal guards were overwhelmed in seconds. Their expensive armor no defense against incapacitating electrical jolts. Gallo found himself staring down the humming tip of Cole's own shock baton. The grand prize was now his cage. With Gallo securely trapped in the captain's chair under Valis's watch, Cole initiated the final phase of his plan. For hours, while the Vagrant played wounded, its powerful hidden intelligence suite had been passively infiltrating the Axiom fleet's low-level comms channels. Quartermaster chatter, supply requests, maintenance logs. Cole's team found what they had expected. The small, everyday grifts of a corrupt commander. Gallo padded his fuel expenses, underreported capture Lumini artifacts, and skimmed a percentage of the slave count for private sales. They were seeds of truth. Cole knew how to grow them into a forest of lies. He sat at the main strategic console. The real weapon wasn't the ship's traps, it was information. Before leaving port, Naval Intelligence had provided Cole with the master encryption keys for the Commerce Syndicate's private network. An analyst in a basement had spent 6 months breaking the code, and now Cole would use it to burn Gallo's world to the ground. He wove Gallo's petty thefts into a grand narrative of betrayal, using the Syndicate's own encryption to make it look like an internal leak. On the main view screen, he brought up a single, elegantly designed file, titled The Grain Ledger. The file contained a collection of perfectly forged manifests, comms logs, and financial ledgers. The narrative they told was simple, believable, and explosive. Gallo was running a rogue operation. The entire Thalassa Hall was never meant for his corporate sponsors. He planned to sell the slaves and resources on the black market, betraying the very syndicates that gave him legitimacy. He even forged documents indicating he used the captured vagrant and its non-existent synaptic looms as a down payment for his own private fleet. A lie built on Gallo's own greed. Cole turned his chair to face the captured Gallo. The rider's face was a thundercloud of impotent rage.
You are a dead man, Cole.
Gallo snarled.
When the Syndicate hears about this, they will hunt you to the galaxy's edge!
I count on them hearing about it. Cole said, his voice flat. That's the problem with your business model, Gallo. It runs on two things, credits and fear. Let's see how it runs with neither. He turned back to the console. Bell, hijack the Axiom fleet's command frequency. Use the backdoor codes we pulled from Gallo's flagship. Codes acquired, sir. Prying it open now. A secure channel indicator blinked green. Broadcast the entire grain ledger to every Axiom ship in the system, Cole commanded. And while you're at it, simultaneously leak the unencrypted package to these 6 independent galactic news networks. He uploaded a list of outlets known for their aggressive anti-corporate stance. Alice leaned in slightly, a grim smile on her lips.
Burn his house down while we're at it, sir?
Cole gave a slight nod. Level the whole block. Give him an exclusive. He didn't just make an accusation. He provided a mountain of detailed, cross-referenced proof. He didn't just cut the head off of the snake. He showed the rest of the snake's body that the head had been stealing their food all along. The result was instantaneous. On the bridges of the Axiom cutters and barges, consoles lit up. Captains stared in disbelief at the data flooding their command channels. Forged logs showed Gallo negotiating with black market syndicates. Financial statements detailed a secret account with millions of credits. Their loyalty to Gallo was transactional. The grain ledger told them that payday was a lie. Simultaneously, halfway across the galaxy in the corporate towers of the commerce syndicates, executives saw their stock tickets quiver, and then dive. News of their licensed contractor running a massive rogue slaving ring with their name attached spread like a virus. Their plausible deniability shattered. They reacted. The draconian automated clause in their privateer contracts, the liability invalidation protocol, triggered. Across the Axiom fleet, a new message overrode every other communication. It was cold, legal, and final. Appearing on every screen in stark block letters. Contract void. Assets frozen. Alliance terminated. Syndicate support codes blacklisted. Gallo watched the same message appear on a monitor in front of him. He watched his fuel credits vanish, his accounts lock, his ship's docking codes across the galaxy turned to digital ash. His face went slack with horror. One moment, he was king, and the next, a pariah. The Axiom fleet, once a unified predator, devolved into a panicked mob. Their supply chain, their legal cover, their entire reason for being vanished. A dozen screaming captains, some demanding answers, others accusing each other of treason, replaced Gallo's voice of command. The wolf pack began to devour itself. On the planet's surface, the chaos in orbit was mirrored by a sudden, unnerving silence on the ground. The Axiom patrol teams found their comms dead. Orders from the Collector ceased. Leaderless and cut off, the thugs became clumsy. This was Nyala's moment. In the glowing light of the sea cave, she looked at a datapad Valis had given her. It displayed a live map of the area, fed by a network of sensor nodes her people had quietly distributed. The red icons of the Axiom patrols moved in confused patterns. She would not become a warrior, but she was a Lumin. She knew the currents, the hidden channels, the secret paths through the reeds no outsider could navigate. The human technology gave her sight. Her heritage gave her the wisdom to use it. Coordinating with the other young Lumini via hand-woven communicators that worked on localized frequencies the Axiom crews couldn't detect, she became an unseen shepherd. She sent out messages of movement. A patrol moves toward the sunken city. Guide the families in the east sector through the Whispering Passage. The western barge powered down its grav lift. The nesting grounds were clear. Move the children. She guided hundreds of Lumini families through ancient hidden waterways. They moved like the water flowing around danger, silent and unseen. She used the new tools not to fight, but to harmonize, blending human tech with Lumini knowledge. She saved her people, and she did it her own way. Two of Cole's security officers escorted Gallo and his 2 personal guards from the bridge. Halfway to the brig, the raiders made their move. It was planned. The guard on the left dislocated his own thumb with a wet pop and slipped his hand from his binders. In the same motion, he drew a hair-thin vibroblade from his boot and slashed the throat of the nearest escort. The second guard lunged at a damaged wall panel, ripping it free to expose a junction box. Gallo, a brute, simply charged, taking the remaining escort into the bulkhead with enough force to crack the man's ribs. He snatched the guard's plasma pistol as he fell. The corridor filled with the stench of superheated air and scorched insulation. Gallo's face was a rictus of rage. Victory was gone. Profit was gone. Only vengeance remained.
Engineering!
He bellowed to his 2 freed loyalists.
If I go down, I will take this whole damn ship with me!
He stormed down the corridor. His goal was annihilation. He would overload the Vagrant's reactor and destroy the ship, the evidence, and the man who orchestrated his downfall in one venomous blaze. An alarm blared as the lockdown doors to engineering were blasted open. Cole met Gallo amidst the thrumming machinery of the engine room. Reggie was already down, nursing a dislocated shoulder, but still spitting curses. Gallo's 2 guards stood by the reactor controls, their pistols trained on the glowing core. Gallo, bigger and stronger, charged Cole with a roar, swinging the heavy plasma pistol like a club. Cole was a logistician, not a brawler. He fought the environment, not the man. He dodged the charge. His hand darted out and slammed a manual override for the primary coolant line. With a deafening hiss, a blast of freezing vapor erupted from a ceiling pipe between them. Gallo recoiled, blinded by the thermal shock. As Gallo wiped the frost from his eyes, Cole was already at a diagnostic terminal, keying in a short sequence. He triggered a controlled plasma arc from an overhead conduit. A whip of blue-white energy cracked through the air. It missed Gallo, but forced him to leap backward onto a specific section of the grated deck. It was a magnetic cargo loading plate. Gallo regained his footing and lunged again, ready to crush this infuriatingly clever little man. But Cole was at another console, the master control for the internal freight system. He activated the loader. With a powerful hum, the magnetic plate Gallo stood on came to life. It slid smoothly across the deck, carrying the screaming raider with it toward a row of empty, reinforced grain containers.
No!
Gallo bellowed, struggling against the magnetic pull that his boots held fast. The plate reached the end of its track, sliding Gallo perfectly into the maw of a container. Cole slammed his palm on another button. The heavy container door boomed shut. A series of thick locks engaged with loud, satisfying thunks. Gallo, the Raider King, was defeated. Not by fist nor by bullet, but by a freight manifest. Cole looked at the sealed container, then keyed his comm. Alice, we have a new item for the cargo hold. One oversized, slightly used tyrant. Please label non-recyclable waste. With Gallo captured and their command structure shattered, the remaining Axiom raiders surrendered. They were broken then, stranded in a hostile system with no money, no fuel, and no future. At Cole's invitation, Elder Kadarius, Niala, and a small contingent of Lumini boarded the Vagrant. They were escorted to the main cargo bay, where the captured, bound raiders were held. One young raider, barely out of his teens, saw the Lumini approaching. He spat at their feet, bracing himself for execution. He'd slaughtered their people. He expected the same in return. But the Lumini offered no anger. Led by Kadarius, they formed a silent, solemn circle around the prisoners. And then they sang. It was no war cry, no song of victory. It was a lament. A low, haunting, multi-tonal chant that filled the cavernous bay with a sound of profound, heart-wrenching sorrow. The notes wove a sense of grief so deep it was a physical weight. The young rider's defiance faltered. He listened, confused, his bravado melting away. This wasn't for their own dead, he realized with a sudden, soul-crushing certainty. They mourned for him. For the hollowed space in his chest, for the spiritual vacuum that permitted such cruelty. The sound stripped away his armor of hate, leaving him feeling naked, ashamed, and utterly defeated in a way that no weapon ever could. He dropped his head into his hands, and he began to weep. The Axiom fleet was no more. Some ships surrendered to the first interstellar Concord patrol to arrive. Others turned on each other, fought over fuel, and vanished into the dark to become pirates. The crew of the Vagrant completed their repairs, Reggie grumbling about fixing the damage Gallo had done to his engine room's pristine bulkheads. On the planet, Cole met with Kadarius and Niala one last time. The defense systems were now seamlessly integrated into the Lumini villages, silent guardians woven into the landscape. The shield emitters were hidden with decorative reed sculptures, the sonic stunners disguised as flat ceremonial stones, all networked and controlled by Niala and her team. Kadarius placed a hand, its skin as soft and tough as ancient leather, on Cole's shoulder.
You fought a war without making us into warriors,
the elder said, his dark eyes filled with quiet wisdom.
You showed us a strength we didn't know we possessed. You made us stronger without making us killers.
He paused.
That is a gift that we can bear.
Niala stood beside him. The desperate fire in her eyes was gone, replaced by a quiet resilience. She had found her way, a way to honor the past while securing the future. She nodded at Cole, a gesture of profound, shared understanding. The Vagrant, battered and scarred, but victorious, lifted from the world of the Lumini. On the bridge, Cole watched the serene green and blue planet recede on the view screen. The air in his lungs felt lighter than it had in years. The ghosts of Cinderfall were not gone, and never would be, but they were quieter now. They no longer screamed, they whispered. Valis stood beside him, her usual rigid posture slightly relaxed. She watched his face, then looked back at the screen, her expression one of quiet, solid respect. "We did it, August," she said softly. He allowed himself a rare, weary smile. He'd been given an absurd task, to face down a fleet with a single freighter, to win a war not with missiles and plasma, but with ledgers and logic. The Terran mandate sent one ship to save a species that would not save itself. One ship. And it was enough.